You know, if you take everything I've accomplished in my entire life and condense it down into one day, it looks decent.
All right, hey, what's up, all you loyal fans? Welcome to another episode of The Decent Show. Got a classic. It's going to be Last Dance Part 2. We recovered the first 4 episodes of The Last Dance a long time ago and took forever to post, and now this is Part 2. We're going to be kind of covering the rest of the show, wrapping everything up. It's one of the biggest sports documentaries we've probably ever seen on TV.
Yep.
As always, Reagan and Ryan. And Reagan, how's it going today?
Good.
Good.
Yeah, I'm not doing bad. Yeah.
That's good. So, The Last Dance, just general thoughts. First off, I think Michael Wilborn said it best, that this documentary was 10 parts and was so interesting because there's just never been a guy like Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's just very few sports stories and people that we'd be willing to sit for 10 episodes of and not get tired of it.
Yeah, we can talk about that towards the end, but I don't think there is another one.
Right. I don't even think they could. I think Tom Brady's getting 8 episodes. I heard they're going to do a Tom Brady thing that's going to be like 8 episodes or something.
Yeah, I don't see how that would be. I don't see how that's as interesting, but I mean, who knows? They can make it interesting. There's some interesting moments in there, but
Right.
not to near this level.
Right. So, Jordan, right away, just an iconic sports legend. This documentary was, to me, amazing. I'm a little confused about how he thought he would be painted in a negative light, or how he thinks people wouldn't like him after this came out. I mean, to me, my perception of him or my thoughts on him haven't really changed at all. I just know more about him now, which I wanted. So,
Yeah.
I mean, how do you feel? Have you changed your opinion on him at all?
Yeah. It's a whole other issue, but I guess I'm more solidified than ever that he should be considered the best.
Okay.
But I've never really watched him play, so it was nice just to watch him play, basically, and just watching him play, and basically every challenge he had, he destroyed. So I don't know, just learning some of the things about him, and just like on every level, like what he did. I don't know. I don't see the argument anymore.
Right. And that's the other thing too. I don't like how the argument's only Jordan, LeBron, but that's a whole nother episode that we'll probably never do because everyone's been doing it
1,000 times every single day.
Right. So, where do you want to kind of start with The Last Dance? Is there like a general thought you wanted to get around to first, or?
Yeah, I feel like I gotta say it because I'm gonna nitpick a couple of things, but at the end of the day, I've watched a lot of sports documentaries recently. Like, pretty much went through most of the 30 for 30s that even looked kind of interesting.
Really, at work?
Or that I haven't seen already. Which, I mean, there's not that many, but still. Yeah, I watched a lot of work. Probably like 6 or 7 at work.
Okay.
Yeah, instead of actually doing my job.
Of course.
Which was great, yeah. 2 birds, 1 stone. And I can honestly say this is probably the best one.
So all the 30 for 30s, all the sports documentaries, it's probably the best one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the thing about like the documentaries and the 30 for 30s is like there's 2 aspects, I feel. It's like how interesting is the original story or the people they follow, and then how well made or told is the documentary.
Right.
And to me, there is no one more interesting than Michael Jordan. I don't know. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. Certainly no one in the sports world, I don't think. And as far as well made, I think it was about as well made as it could be. They had all the people I wanted to see them give interviews. They covered a lot of things. And honestly, at the beginning of this, we talked about how it was going to be like this 10-part event or whatever. And I was like, man, I don't want to watch 10 parts. We're watching like The Boys right now. And even I'm like, man, does this have to be 10 parts? But I guess that's just me.
What?
I'm enjoying it, but it's just, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like 10 hours of this.
Right.
Is it really necessary?
Right.
Not saying it's good. But you know
The
what
Boys
I mean?
are The Last Dance.
No, they're both good. But I'm saying, like, The Boys is good, but I'm still wondering, maybe they could have made this shorter. But The Last Dance, I wish it was longer. I wish there was more.
I do too.
And I don't know if there's a whole lot of shows that are like that. I'm trying to think of all the hour episode, like, mini-series kind of things I've watched. Yeah, I don't know. I think it.
Did you ever watch Band of Brothers on HBO? I always feel like that's regarded as like the best miniseries ever.
I watched that, but I didn't even something like Ballers or whatever, you know.
Right.
I'm still just. I feel like sometimes they're wasting time or whatever. I feel like there was almost no wasted time, and every part of it was pretty interesting. And I wish they would have gone more in depth or just kept going and talked about him during the Wizard years and retirement, and it just kind of ends abruptly.
Right.
But honestly, yeah, I love the documentary. Honestly, loved it.
Okay, so where do you nitpick then? Where are your problems?
There's just some things during it where I don't really buy the angle they're putting on it, because
Right.
every documentary is, you can't really make it unbiased. I mean, you can't really make anything unbiased, but still, I feel like documentaries always have more bias than other things. And some of the bias I do not buy, mainly because I know the facts on some of them, and on other things I cannot comprehend it. Like when they went to, we're going back like in the towards the beginning of the documentary, they talk about how the dream team went overseas, and they like sort of built up. Where is Kukoc from? Is he,
I don't know.
Exactly.
Whatever I try to guess is going to be wrong. Maybe Croatia?
That sounds familiar. They try to build up that team as, all right, this is a real challenge or whatever, and I'm just like, no, it's not. I'm sorry, it's not.
Right.
I hate to break it to you. And then what bothered me, again, was they try to put this spin on, like, Kukoc did such a great job in the second game where he really struggled in the first game. They lost by, like, 33 points or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go 33. They lost by 33 points in the first game. Huge blowout. The second game, they hype it up. He plays so much better, and it's for the gold medal. And they lose by 32 points.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm like, no, that's not really. I mean, I'm sure he played better, but
He did, yeah.
I remember he had like 2 points in the first game. He had 20 or something, 15.
Well, I mean, the biggest problem they had there was the fact that Krause wanted to draft him.
Yeah, I agree.
Krause wanted him,
And
and
that-
so Jordan and Pippen were like, nah.
And that's where the memes, I feel like created are off of instances like that, where this guy wants to get drafted by your general manager. So I took it personally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting challenge to set for yourself. But I don't know. I was like, the Euro has nothing on America in
Right.
this. They have nothing.
Right. I think they just hated Krause that much.
I'm sure they did.
and they wanted to ruin his prospect.
And they made it epic and intense, but in just... the games were never in question.
Right, of course.
Especially
yeah.
with this squad. Like, they had such a elite squad, and they talk about the practices with the players as the most intense thing, and it's just funny to me that the practice with your own team is more intense than the actual league.
Right. But I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes
I
sense.
like seeing that. Yeah, their practices.
Just things like that.
So, what about the pizza one then? Because that's what I thought you were going to say.
Oh,
The flu game,
the
where he eats the pizza in Utah that was obviously poisoned, and he has the stomach flu. Did you buy that?
Then he had the stomach flu and he wasn't drunk or something.
I'm not even trying to imply that he's drunk, but I mean, they tell the story like, where they're playing cards and gambling, drinking in the hotel room, casually apparently. Michael claims it's only 10 or 10:30 at night. They're just doing their thing. They have a playoff game the next day in Utah.
Yeah.
They're at the hotel, and apparently Michael gets hungry. And no room service. And they're calling around, and apparently nobody's open. They can't get any food for Michael. They find one pizza joint, order a large pizza, and have it delivered. And when it's his trainer and his personal assistant / best friend that are with him.
Yeah.
And maybe other people, but those are the two guys telling the story along with Michael. And they say that they drop off the pizza. They have 5 guys delivering the pizza. 5 people delivering one pizza.
Yeah.
And they're all acting suspicious. They're trying to see who's in the hotel room. And the trainer pays for the pizza, takes it back in, and goes, I have a bad feeling about this. And Michael's the only one who apparently eats it. And they let him eat it. He could have cussed them out and told them, screw it, I'm eating the pizza. And they're like, okay. And he does it. But, do you really buy that? They couldn't get food anywhere else. And obviously the trainer told Michael, hey, 5 guys tried dropping off this pizza. They're acting really sketchy. You have a game tomorrow. Probably shouldn't eat this pizza. Let's just go to the McDonald's drive-thru or something.
Yeah.
I just don't get... I don't buy that.
Yeah, I guess that didn't bother me as much because it doesn't change anything.
And I know it doesn't change anything. I just don't get how that's the story. And why is it pronounced that he had flu-like symptoms and this and that? Why were they not just going, yeah, I have stomach flu, I got food poisoned? Like, why would they not be honest about what the symptoms were? Why has the media and everybody ever been reporting that he had the flu, and it's called the flu game, and the shoes are called the flu games, but until this documentary, we didn't know he had food poisoning from pizza? Like, why would they have never said that earlier?
I don't know.
Like, just all of that bothers me. The fact that he would eat that pizza, they couldn't get food anywhere else. Everyone called it the flu game when he was really food poisoned. I just don't know if I buy any of that. And it all bothers me.
And
Now,
why?
granted, I know it's 98. It's not necessarily an era of everything being 24 hours. But I still feel like they could have gotten other food.
Yeah, no, they definitely could have gotten other food, but I guess it bothers me more that seems like that's not even the true story.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
But-
That's where I think the bias is coming in. I feel like something else could have happened.
What are they covering up, you know?
Maybe that he was drinking and gambling excessively.
I mean, that must be it, right? He must have been doing something bad if they need to cover it up. Because why would you cover it up? Because you're covering up something that's already legendary
Right.
with something else that's the same thing, basically. Flu, stomach flu. What does it matter?
Because even if he was hungover, if he was poisoned, no matter what, he was not physically able to play. He still played, and they still won a pivotal Game 5.
Yeah.
Massive win.
Yeah,
So no matter what, to me, he's legendary. So I just don't buy that story.
right.
I don't know. That's where I thought you were going with the whole bias thing, though. Because to me, like, I feel like the documentary is like it giving you that story to make Michael look okay. Like, hey, Michael was poisoned, and he still went out there and won the game.
Yeah.
Instead of him being irresponsible and drinking all night and being hungover. Because whether you're food poisoned or you drink way too much, you could be throwing up all night and not feel good.
Right.
And be sweating profusely and not have the physical capabilities to play a basketball game.
And the thing is, it's 20 years later, and he won the championship anyway. So what does it matter?
I don't know.
That's the thing, is he won. So what does it matter?
And if the story is true, how could he be that dumb? Just don't eat the pizza. Either go hungry or go somewhere else. Like, it is obvious that pizza was tampered with.
Yeah.
I don't get that. I don't get how he could be that stupid, or I just can't buy the story.
Or someone let him eat that. Why
Right.
would anyone let
Yeah,
him eat that?
his personal assistant, best friend, and his trainer are there. And his trainer even said, yo, this is sketch. According to him in the story. But they could all be lying.
It doesn't add up.
Right.
It just doesn't add up. I mean, but I think, yeah. And they do that a couple of times where it's clear that his gambling and his drinking are somewhat of an issue.
Right.
But they glass over it. They acknowledge it, which is, I'll give them more credit. You know, they at least acknowledge it, because they could have just not even said anything about it.
Right.
But they also just sort of, yeah, he was out late. Yeah, what about it? You know,
Right.
and but it was also, is he
He
a part?
couldn't live.
Is he a part of that time where it doesn't really matter? It's not as, you're not under the microscope as much in
Right.
terms of, you're here all the time. Like, you know, you're gonna be seen by everyone, so you can't do literally anything. Whereas, like, there's no pictures of them. They have no pictures of him at a bar or casino or something.
Right. It's one of those. I hate saying it, it's one of those things. Yeah.
You
Classic.
came close.
So the problem is he was under as much scrutiny and as much media pressure as one could be at the time, because that wasn't a time where, like, LeBron lives in, where everybody's on social media, everybody has a camera. Because, I mean, he was the focus point of everything.
Yeah.
Like, everything he did was in the media light, or it doesn't matter. Anyway, everything he did, like, the media made a big deal about. They questioned him on everything, and, you know, when his dad was murdered, he was basically blamed by the media,
Yeah.
and, like, asked if his gambling was part of it, and everyone claims it wasn't. So again, I don't know if that's, again, the documentary
I wouldn't.
playing bias towards him, because I have heard conspiracy videos about him having outstanding gambling, or gambling with bad people, like playing underground card games with, like, drug dealers and sketchy people and people with just a lot of cash, and it not going well. And if for any reason he pissed one of those people off, yeah, maybe they'd want to kill his dad. But they, like, barely covered the murder story of his dad in the documentary. They focused way more on how the media treated Michael like shit after his dad died,
Yeah.
and questioned him, and was he to blame for his father's death because of his gambling. And everyone's like, he's got plenty of money. Like, he wouldn't owe anybody money. And David Stern also said he didn't have a gambling problem because all the gambling he was doing was quote-unquote legal, didn't break NBA rules, and he was doing it with his own money. And he's gambling on his poker and his golf. He's not gambling on basketball. And $10,000 to Michael Jordan is like $10 to you and me.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I would give a kind of lame answer where, like, his dad's death, his gambling problem, you can tell me it's not, connected. You can tell me he didn't have a gambling problem. I wouldn't bet. I wouldn't say I believe either way really that much.
Right.
I don't have any faith that that's actually the right answer.
Right.
Because it just seems, it's just weird,
Because they didn't talk about it a lot. They're just like, yeah, they arrested 2 18-year-olds. It's like, okay, well, who were these 18-year-olds? What was their motivation? Why did they kill?
Why this random guy?
Yeah, why did they kill
Did they know
Michael
it was
Jordan's
him?
dad?
Yeah. Are they like? I mean, honestly, are they like Jazz fans or something?
Right.
Are they like?
Well, that was '93. That was before the Jazz rivalry.
Well, just
started.
just an NBA team. Were they just fans of what? I don't even know what the rivals of the Bulls are.
But you're right. I mean, yeah, they don't even cover that at all, and I just don't get why. But again, it seems like nobody cares. Like I don't know. I don't get on Twitter enough, but from all the social media stuff I see, I didn't see anybody going, yeah. So what was up with Michael Jordan's dad's killers? Like, how come? Why'd they do it? What? How did they know that it was them? Because they didn't find him immediately.
Yeah, it's weird.
So I don't know. I think there's some foul play there somewhere. Anything else? Kind of general thoughts of stuff that you either liked or didn't like?
No.
I got a lot of notes here.
Yeah, run through them.
All right, so someone on ESPN had made a point about Pippen looking bad in this documentary, and he hasn't made comments on The Last Dance. And someone said, well, come on, he's Michael's ride or die. And then someone else said, well, he's his ride, but I don't know about die. And they freaked out about that too. They're like, oh, I couldn't agree with that more. And I kind of think the same way. Like, Pippen will always give the respect to Jordan and say that he would always play with Jordan, and like he won 6 rings with him, obviously. But like at the same time, like, do you really think he's ride or die for Jordan?
I mean, I think he's kind of bitter because people don't think of him. I mean, he wasn't. I forget what ESPN's top 100 players of all time are, or 72, something like that, top 72, and he was like in the 40s or something. And Michael's number 1. And that kind of sucks.
Right.
Shaq and Kobe were 9 and 10. I mean, that's another dynamic duo that probably couldn't have done it without the other.
Right.
So, and it just kind of sucks that he's all the way at 40 when he was a phenomenal player, and he was getting underpaid the entire time.
Right.
So I feel like he's just bitter, and I don't know. I don't really blame him.
I can't blame him either. So these are all the things that basically made him not look good. First off, he was underpaid, and he couldn't get his contract negotiated.
Yeah.
He tried, and Krause basically wouldn't budge on that. The organization wouldn't budge on that, which is part of where they messed up. He was in constant trade rumors. Constantly, thought that he was going to get traded. At one point, he demanded to be traded. They wanted to trade him. He wanted them to trade him. Ended up not happening, which does work out for the best because they all get the rings. But that kind of sucks for him that he's the one that's being traded. He refused to check into the game that one time in '94, I believe, against the Knicks when the play was drawn up for Kukoc and not him.
Yeah.
So he refused to come into the game, so that made him look really bad. And obviously, I got super emotional too when they were talking about that locker room thing. Like, Tony Kukoc ends up hitting the game-winning shot, and the Bulls basically aren't happy at all because they're just so shocked that Scotty would quit on the team like that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And they had that huge speech in the locker room about him quitting on the team and this and that.
Yeah, I mean, that was crappy of him. But I also I don't know, I feel like that was his only folly, really. That was the only thing he did that was super wrong in my mind.
So he had surgery late on purpose. He could have had surgery over the summer and purposely didn't and missed the beginning of the season, which they got off to a bad start in the beginning of that season. It was the '98 season. So to me, that also made him look bad. And then this stuff, he didn't necessarily have control, but again, they're covering it as a setback for Michael Jordan's accomplishments with his back spasms against the Jazz in like the 97 or 98 finals, or both.
Mhm.
One of them, I can't remember.
It was the 98.
And the migraine against Detroit in Game 7 in 1990.
Yeah.
Because they didn't get there till 91, but they could have been there in 90, but Scotty had a migraine and couldn't play Game 7. Another thing that makes him look bad. And then we see Jordan, we see John Paxson, Steve Kerr, Tony Kukoc. We see all these guys hitting game winners. Didn't see Scotty hit a single game winner. Now, granted, he doesn't. But like when I say that too, I mean like we didn't see. They talked about how good he was, but I feel like we didn't see like a ton of it. We didn't
Yeah.
see a ton of his impact on the game. Like we see Steve Kerr. Like they make a huge deal about Steve Kerr and John Paxson's game-winning shots, but we didn't see a ton of like Scotty's game-winning impacts throughout the documentary.
I think part of that is to make Jordan look better. I think if his number 2 is looking worse, he's looking a lot better,
Right.
which is interesting.
Yeah,
But-
I don't know. I just thought it was interesting because I feel like we learned a lot about Scotty that we didn't know. Scotty definitely got some appreciation that he's missed out on during those years. But at the same time, I feel like he kind of got a lot of shade, a lot of blame.
Yeah.
And I would have liked to have more highlights of him.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that he's pretty much saved from anything that you can really say because of Jerry.
Right.
Because I think it all comes back to him.
Yeah.
Because he is dumped on the most in this documentary.
Right. Right.
And it kind of sucks because he's not alive, so he's not around to say anything on his behalf.
Right.
But no one else will stick up for him. No one else will really stick up for him. Like nowadays, you know. I mean,
No.
they all say what they need to say in the time. I remember when they won the last championship, Phil Jackson saying, you know, thank you, Jerry, for, you know, making us this team and letting us have one more ride. You know, really, hats off to you or whatever. Like, he congratulates him in front of everyone at the celebration.
Right.
And, you know, everybody boos him. Everybody boos Jerry, you know. I don't know. It's just...
So it's kind of crazy, too. Back then, they knew that Jerry was the worst.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. But, I don't know.
I guess when your team's that good, like, I guess you're... I don't know. It'd be weird to me that because the only way they have to look at anything is on TV.
Yeah, TV and newspaper.
Yeah, I don't know. But I guess they were able to keep up with it.
So another thing that kind of happens throughout the documentary that they don't talk on a lot because it's a Michael Jordan documentary, but I think maybe they kind of covered it a little bit more on ESPN. But Isaiah and the Bad Boys.
Yeah.
Great team. They're definitely a-holes. They cover that in the Bad Boys 30 for 30.
Love it.
Great documentary. They cover it more in this documentary as well about like them not shaking hands, walking off the court after being beat in '91 in a sweep.
Yeah.
Which was epic. Now, granted, they are smug, but technically, Isaiah and that team beat Magic Johnson and the Lakers, Larry Bird and the Celtics, and Michael Jordan and the Bulls.
Yep.
They beat 3 of the greatest dynasties to ever exist to win 2 championships. I think they don't necessarily get enough credit.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, well, especially when you consider only one of their players is even remotely ever talked about.
Right.
Well,
None of the other guys. I mean, it's Isaiah Thomas and then Dennis Rodman and Joe Dumars.
And Bill Laimbeer.
Right. But
those are all...
And I think on the all-time Pistons team, I think Robert was telling me on the all-time Pistons team, their all-time starting 5 was like Isaiah and Joe Dumars, and then like nobody else from that
Yeah.
team, I think.
But yeah, they beat a lot of people, but they were also assholes about
Right.
everything.
Oh yeah. And then Dennis Rodman, I thought he was amazing.
Wild.
Just
Wild, dude.
Yeah.
What he gets away with and what he just chooses to do and when he chooses to do it.
And he never would have gotten away with that in this era of basketball.
No.
Never.
Yeah.
Never. And I would have liked more of him, and I would have liked more explanations from him or from somebody about what and why he was doing what he was doing.
And why they let him get away with it.
But I guess all of it boiled down to they knew he was going to do what he was going to do, and he said, and he always just kept saying, I had to do what I had to do.
Yeah,
and
and that,
party.
that's all he says too.
Yeah.
He just like mumbles that, and it's like, well,
But why? Why are you depressed?
Why
Why
is
are
that
you
what-
sitting with a gun in the parking lot?
why is that what you have to do? You know, why don't you just play golf or something like everyone else does in their off time or something.
But he was wild. I also wish they had more of this, but I did like I want to say it was maybe episode 5 or 6, maybe both, but just Jordan's first interactions with Kobe.
Yeah.
I kind of wish there was a little bit more of that, but I liked that. I liked how he like kind of was giving Kobe crap about how like, oh, that young Laker boy wants to take every shot, this and that, and like I don't know, he was like talking crap on him, but you could tell like he knew right away that like Kobe had what it took. Like
Yeah.
he had that special mentality, the competitive fire. Like I don't know, I liked that.
And that's another example of an exaggeration where they kind of make Kobe look like he didn't even really play that game. Or he played very poorly.
Right.
And he had the most points on his team.
Right.
So, but it's just like, you know, it's very much...
It's Michael Jordan's documentary.
It's very much Michael Jordan's documentary, and it's,
The other thing, I'm not saying I have a problem with it because a lot of it was very emotional, but we got a lot more Steve Kerr backstory than I was anticipating.
Yeah, that was weird.
It was weird.
I didn't know that and did not see that coming. And I can't believe that him and Michael never said anything.
Yeah,
to each
they
other.
never. But I guess, like, I don't know, Michael's weird, first off, and it's just kind of a weird conversation to have with somebody.
It is. And I guess they all feared him too, mostly.
Right.
Most of them, like, kind of feared Michael, so.
Right, so
I
I
guess-
feel like Steve wouldn't just be like, hey man, so your dad died too, huh? Like, I don't know.
I get the feeling that everyone in that locker room is basically an aunt to him. Like, they just don't. I just feel like they're like, yeah, we're nothing to him. Why even bother talking to him?
Yeah.
Because they just take all of his shit. They just do exactly what he says. They just take all the ass chewings, all the, do whatever, do this, that, or the other. Like, all they want to do is please him. They always talk about, yeah, I want to be the guy that comes off the bench and, they look to me for a couple of shots and I want to make them. I want to make Michael happy,
Right.
Maybe that's why he didn't want to. He looked like an asshole.
Right, and again, I feel like it's a touchy thing to talk about, but I thought Steve Kerr's backstory was interesting because I did not know any of that stuff. And I did like his fight with Michael in practice, where he basically didn't back down to Michael and, pushed him or punched him or whatever, and Michael, like, knocked him in the face, and then they called each other later, or Michael called Steve later and, like, apologized, said he was out of line, and they, like, had a respect for each other after that.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael like tells him, "Hey Steve, like you're gonna be open for the shot, like be ready." And he is open for the shot, and he hits it.
Yep.
I don't know. I liked that whole thing. I like that Steve Kerr backstory.
What'd you think about like how they went? Did you like the fact that they went back and forth through the '98 season?
What do you mean?
They always started. They started the very beginning of the '98 season, then they went all the way back to when Jordan was drafted.
Yeah. Right.
And then they go to the mid-season, and then they go to the first championship.
Right. So I already told you how Last Dance and Little Women are told the same way.
Yeah.
Right. So it's an interesting way to tell a story,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess I don't necessarily hate it. I didn't like it at first, just because I've already seen all the growing up stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything leading up to the first championship, I've seen so much that I just like. I don't care as much. So
Yeah.
whenever we were in the '98 season, I'm like, oh yeah. And then
There
it
we go.
goes
And then,
back to him being a kid. I'm like, okay. Like I've heard the story about him and his brother Larry so many times
Yeah.
playing in the backyard. Like all that stuff I was kind of whatever on. And to me, they didn't give me enough tidbits of his college career that made that stuff more interesting. Like all that stuff. Again, other people probably loved it, and that's fine. For me, it didn't.
I did.
Right.
But I didn't know anything about it.
Right. And so for me, it didn't do a whole lot for me, but I did like it a lot more once they got to that first championship. And they're going from like first championship back to the middle of '98, second championship, '98, third champ. Like once it started getting in the 90s and they were going back and forth and it kept getting closer and closer to where it's like, okay, 95, 98, 96, 98, 97. And now we're like, now they meet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I liked that. But at the beginning, I was a little peeved by it. Especially when you get to a good part and then they jump back.
Yep. Yeah.
That kind of, and then when they did jump back and you finally gave them a chance to tell it whatever it is they wanted to tell you for jumping back, you're like, okay, this is also interesting.
Yeah, I think
For the most part.
I think a factor for me was like I binged like episodes 5 through 8 all at once. So I had 4 episodes back to back. So like, oh man, they're not coming back to it. I'll see it.
Right.
It wasn't really that big of a deal.
Did
for
you
me.
have to sit through commercials when you watched them?
Mhm.
Lucky. That's the other thing that made watching this tough is I was watching him live,
Yeah.
and so even though I don't know if you watch it 2 hours straight uninterrupted, it just doesn't seem as bad as watching it 2 hours with commercials. I don't know if that makes sense. Like if I could have watched it with no commercials, it'd technically be less than 2 hours. But watching it with the commercials made
Sucked,
it feel
yeah.
like forever. Yeah, because you get through that first episode, you're like, all right, man, that was great. And you feel like you're done for the night, and then
Mhm.
there's a whole nother episode. And granted, that episode would be great, but I had to sit through another 15 minutes of commercials.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. The commercials ruined it watching it live. I definitely can't wait to watch it on Netflix because I'll watch it,
Oh, you know it. Well,
10 episodes straight.
it'll be going somewhere for sure.
Well, it says brought to you by ESPN and Netflix, and I looked it up, and it claims on Google that it's coming to Netflix July 16th.
All right.
So, I hope. Because otherwise, if it doesn't go to Netflix, why is Netflix all over the title captions?
Yeah, I never even noticed that, but yeah.
And another thing I loved about this was, I guess I didn't realize how much of a factor his body was between playing basketball and baseball. I just assumed he was such a super athlete because he was always playing basketball, golf, doing whatever the hell he wanted all the time, that he could just flip between sports.
Yeah.
I didn't realize the workouts were that significant to where when he came back in '95 and they lost to the Magic, and then he works out all summer as a basketball player, and they come back and sweep them the next year. And they had the same team.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I just love that because
Wild.
it also shows his motivation. Like he was so pissed about losing that they not only won 72 games, but then they swept the team that beat them the previous year. And that team was a hell of a team. Granted, they did lose to the Rockets in the finals. Got swept by the Rockets in the finals, who were a 6 seed, lowest seed to ever win a championship.
Let's go.
Clutch City, bro. But also him coming back in that 95 year and dropping 55 in Madison Square Garden, I'd like that as well.
Yeah, that was nice. You know what I wish I would have had more time on? I feel like they always gloss over the baseball thing because that's just so crazy to me, but maybe there's not much.
Right.
They glossed over Space Jam really fast, which I think is also just a crazy thing.
Right.
Why would he sign up to do that movie? You know what I mean? I wanted more people to talk about that.
Good point. Yeah.
It's just a weird thing. Like if
How
that would
that
have
came
happened
to
now,
be.
that'd be weird.
Right.
The only reason LeBron's doing it is because Jordan did
Did
it.
it.
That's the only
Right.
reason that's happening. You know, that's never.
Well, okay, so why did LeBron get on Trainwrecked? Like they could have had anybody.
Yeah, but he didn't star in that movie though.
Right. You're right.
And I'm just like that's just such. And it's not. It's Trainwreck is a rated R raunchy comedy. He can come in and say a couple of funny things. You know,
Right.
he's not carrying
Well, and he's
a
also-
kids Looney Tune film.
Yeah, that's true too. I don't know. You're right. Yeah, I kind of wish they would have been like, yeah, how did this come to be? But I mean, it is Warner Brothers. They probably just threw a big ton of money at him, and he probably likes the Looney Tunes.
I guess. Yeah. I don't know. That still is a crazy thing that I think we just accept. Yeah. Michael Jordan did a Looney Tunes movie, and it's like a cult classic.
Yeah.
And he did it, and it's also set on his life, you know, because he's
Mhm.
playing baseball at the beginning, and then he goes back to basketball at the end.
And it's got Wayne Knight.
It's just weird. Exactly. He's fixing a divot.
Oh, and a lot of people believe that the Martian in Space Jam is Jerry Krause, the evil Martian that puts together the Monstars. There's been a lot of comparisons that that character was based on Jerry Krause. Because he's a short, fat guy that wants all the credit, does nothing, and smokes cigars, and is an asshole, basically.
Man, you never know. I don't know. I wish they would open up about that.
They always thought that was like a subtle jab from Michael.
He had input on that. He's like, here, I'll tell you what I want him to look
Oh,
like.
like
Here,
Jerry
let me
Krause.
show you a picture of him.
Well, you notice too, because that Martian, his dream is to have Michael Jordan shackled up and play basketball games and sign autographs all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, right.
A
So
lot of similarities.
right, and then I think Michael says it best, and also Michael Wilborn said this as well on ESPN. Just the fact that they didn't get to go again.
Yeah.
Michael Wilborn's like, it's basketball. In basketball, winner stays on the court. You keep playing until you lose. And even Michael Jordan wanted to do that. He wanted to keep playing. He wanted to go for the 7th ring. Why not? And the fact that they didn't get to try, he's still bitter about that.
Mhm.
And I am too. Like, that's so annoying. Like, why would you break up a 6-time championship team? If they lose, break them up. They didn't lose.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to make some adjustments, make some adjustments. But to dismantle the team over ego, saying that Phil Jackson can't come back no matter what his record is, go 82-0, you're not coaching next year.
And then they win the championship.
Right.
And they offer him the job, but he doesn't want it.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they offer Phil, not Krause, but
Owner Jerry Reincroft.
Owner talks to him about it, and he's like, yeah, I know we said, you go 82-0 or whatever, but we want to offer you a deal. And he just says, I know Jerry doesn't want to go in that direction. I just think that, like, by that time, it
was just so tainted.
They were just so done with each other. Like, everybody was just so done, because they really glossed over it a lot in the documentary, but, that's a whole year of turmoil. And every day you go to work and you hate your boss.
Right.
And your boss hates you, and y'all are trying to achieve the same thing, and you do achieve the same thing, but it's not... It's like almost tainted. Like, they didn't even seem that happy when they won the championship. I mean, they seemed happy, but it was also just, okay, all right, great, we won the championship, But it doesn't make any sense, and I don't really blame Phil Jackson for wanting to leave, but it's just stupid that he had to leave and that they couldn't just
do it.
Run it back or just make one move. I think if you make one move, I don't see what that problem with that team is. And I feel like they could have probably won again because I feel like they definitely would have beaten that San Antonio Spurs team.
Yeah.
And the East is theirs.
Right.
I don't see who's coming out of the East.
Exactly. And it was supposed to be the Pacers, their biggest challenge in, quote, 98, quote,
and they
unquote,
fell off.
And they lost to the Knicks in 99.
Yeah.
Who were the 8th seed.
Yeah.
Which was wild. But yeah, just the fact that, like, Jerry hated how much credit Phil got and couldn't stand it and thought that it was all the organization. And I just don't think this could happen in the modern NBA either, that this many people could have this many problems with each other and still win the championship.
That's true, and I don't think that this could happen, and I don't think this would happen now because I think that the media would destroy
all of it.
This for happening because they would just be like, you're literally causing our best athlete to retire and stop playing.
Right.
Like
but the media was destroying it while it was happening too, though. Because they kept asking Michael, you coming back next year? Michael, you coming back next year?
Yeah, but the media wasn't everywhere all the time, 24/7. There wasn't a first take every second of every day.
Right.
There wasn't, Twitter. There wasn't discussions about the greatest of all time. There wasn't all these different things that would have made Michael Jordan even bigger than what he is now, he is now and he was then.
Right.
But like if they had that there, that someone on the inside of the Bulls probably would have been like, "Hey Jerry, like we're gonna give you money and you're gonna leave or something, but you're not gonna. If you're the reason Michael Jordan retires, you'll die. Someone's gonna kill you.
Right.
Or you'll be fired.
Right. Yeah, that was another thing. I thought the owner definitely effed up on that. Because if it comes down to it, I'd keep Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan over Jerry Krause.
Yeah. And I don't know. It's just me, but I'm making all this money. I'm winning championships. What do I need more credit for?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Maybe that's just like us,
our generation,
on a different level.
Our way of thinking. Well, they claim he had little man syndrome. He wanted credit. Like, he wanted to be a big man. And the other thing, I might have just lost it, but...
Excellent.
Jerry. I can't. Something about
There's so
Jerry.
many things with them, yeah. It's going to be hard for you to think of it because there's so many things they talk about. They dump on them all the time in this documentary.
I just don't get why... Damn it, dude, I lost it. Oh, and LeBron. That's what it was, LeBron. I don't think LeBron will ever be put in that situation that Jordan was put in that 98 season. And if he was, he wouldn't win the ring. If I had to guess. The media might try to create one for him.
A situation of what?
To where, like, hey, LeBron, like, this is your last season with this team or your last season in general. No matter what, the team's breaking up or just, I don't know, that kind of pressure to where, like, this is your last run.
Well, because that's not... It's a whole different ballgame now because LeBron basically controls free agency because he is in contact with all these guys. Everybody's buddy now. Everybody wants to join up forces. So
but nobody
if you're like,
really joins LeBron, though. Besides from AD. People do, but also, I mean, he joined the Heat
But you know what I mean? Like, he definitely talked to those guys like, hey, y'all want a ball together.
Right.
And that would have happened. Like, Jordan wouldn't have never said that. He would have just been like, that's what's wild is he's like, I'm not playing with him. I'm done. I'm retiring. You know? And he's at his peak. He's literally at his peak. He never fell off his peak as a
Who
Bull.
did he say that to? Wait, what?
He's Jordan. He's talking about Phil Jackson. I'm not playing with Phil Jackson. All right, I'm gone.
Right.
I'm leaving the sport.
Right.
That's why you can never threaten LeBron in this day and age with that, because LeBron would not say I'm retiring. He would say, "Oh, okay, this is my last year. All right, I'll give it a shot, but you know, you go ahead and like release me or trade me or wherever. I'm just gonna get more people to come like join me,
Right.
and then we're just gonna win anyway."
Right. And do you buy like a lot of people say, you know, people didn't want to play with Jordan, and a lot of modern NBA people kind of agree or disagree with that? I mean, what do you think? Do you think modern NBA people would like want to play with Jordan? Is he somebody that people would want to play with?
Complicated answer, but I think a lot of people are just bitter because he whipped their ass for 10 years. Honestly, I mean, he literally destroyed them. Like he went through everyone.
No, I meant like modern guys though.
Oh, you mean modern people wouldn't want to play with Jordan? They're
Right.
talking out of their ass. Who would not want to play with Jordan? You wouldn't want to ever play with Jordan,
Right.
let alone like just winning with him. You don't want to ever play with a guy like Michael Jordan.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of it was like analysts or certain people would say that, and then like certain modern NBA players are like, yeah, I would play with him. Like,
'Cause why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? Right. Okay, so we talked about the pizza incident, the fact that they didn't get to go for the 7th ring, which again is just so ridiculous. The fact that they couldn't work that out, and I blame Jerry Krause. But at the same time, like you've already said, a lot of people have said, I'd love to hear what he has to say on that subject. But moving right along, I want to talk really quickly about the Rockets during the Bulls championship runs. From the time of the Bulls' first 3 championships, the record for the Rockets versus the Bulls was like 6-2 or 7-1 in favor of the Rockets.
Yeah.
Like the Rockets pretty much owned the Bulls in the regular season.
Yep.
Granted, it's the regular season. Michael's a different animal in the playoffs, but
I mean, the Jazz swept the Bulls the year they lost.
in the regular season.
Yeah, they're the only team that the Bulls didn't beat during the '98 season. The Bulls beat every other team, like at least once.
That's interesting. Wonder if they did that on purpose, though.
To give them that, because they were like the Jazz the second time were highly favored, from what they make it seem like.
Right.
Maybe not highly favored, but they were definitely the favorite.
Right.
And they came out swinging, and then it was 3-1.
Right. I don't know then. I just thought it would have been interesting because it seemed like the Bulls didn't match up well with the Rockets, just because the Rockets, from what I've saw in like the regular season game we played against them, we had a lot of height and athleticism, and like obviously like Hakeem and Thorpe were just worlds above their power forwards and their centers. And our whole offense basically ran through the post. And if the post wasn't there, Hakeem could kick it out to 3 different shooters in Kenny Smith, Vernon Maxwell, and Robert Horry.
Yeah.
And it was a young Robert Horry, too, because I saw him do some nasty dunks. And he matched up well with Pippen. Granted, Pippen might have been the way better player, but they're basically the same height. And both very versatile. And Vernon Maxwell was a tenacious defender and an asshole. So he was a good matchup for Michael. And then again, Kenny Smith is a better point guard than whoever their point guard was at the time. You know, John Paxson, B.J. Armstrong, whatever.
Yeah.
So I just thought the Rockets matched up really well against the Bulls, but they couldn't get out of the West to meet them in the finals. Because the Suns went to the finals in 93.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the Blazers went to the finals in 92. Lakers 91. Like the fact that the Rockets didn't get out of the West until 94 and Michael's not there.
Yeah. And
You know,
that sucks.
they played the Knicks and they beat the Knicks and they swept the Magic, who had just beat the Bulls. Granted, Michael wasn't the same.
Right.
Still, I just thought it would have been interesting. I wonder if Michael's legacy would have been affected. Probably not legacy affected, but maybe a championship or two affected had the Bulls or had the Rockets been able to get out of the West. Which is weird to me that the Rockets can do so good against the Bulls, but they can't get out of the West.
That is weird. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, the West is great, but
Yeah, the West.
the East is great too at that time.
Right.
Yeah, it's just weird. I don't know. Part of me would like to say, yeah, the Rockets were the best team those years, but honestly, dude, like I I don't know, man. Maybe the Bulls would have won
Oh, the Bulls
in
probably
94,
could've-
95, and he
If,
would have ran
yeah.
back 8 straight championships because
Another huge what if.
he changes his body for an entire year,
Right.
and he has to sort of recover from that, and he's only getting older from there on out. So if he were just to stay in basketball and not have to grind back up to like where he needed to be or beyond that,
Right.
because I guess his best season is probably 96, right? Is that
Right.
considered his best season?
Eh,
It's hard to say.
maybe individual stats, not so much. I'd have to double check because he might have had the most points per game that season than he's ever had in other seasons. But there was a season where he won MVP and Defensive Player of the Year in the same year,
Yeah, I mean,
which
well,
was
that's-
'89. So I'd consider that maybe his best season. But they didn't win a ring, and they didn't go 72-10 that year. So it's like I would pick 72-10 in a ring over being MVP and Defensive Player of the Year.
and I know I should know the numbers, but I remember looking at like some of those other Bulls records where they had like the best, they had the best record, and they were like 69, 68, 67, like huge number of wins, not 72-10, but like still a shit ton of wins. And I'm like, wow, okay, well, they were really dominant. So like to me, it's just those two years, they probably would have won again.
And I think it's why they cover it a little bit better than I expected because I wasn't fully aware of it. I definitely was always under the impression that he retired because his dad died and his dad wanted him to play baseball. In the previous documentaries I've seen, that's really the only angle they play.
Yeah.
Is that his dad died and his dad wanted him to play baseball, so in his dad's dying wish, he went to go play baseball because he was bored of basketball, didn't really have a challenge anymore. He had already accomplished everything he wanted to. And all of that is probably true. But also in The Last Dance, to me, they really cover a lot more of the fact that he kind of got pushed out of the game because he just didn't have the love for it anymore because, again, part of it being his dad dying, but the media
Yeah.
just hounding him about his dad dying, about being a champion.
They say that line where
Like-
you're gonna be the guy that drove away Michael Jordan. You know that, right? They're talking to like some of the press.
Right. Exactly. That. And it's just, if the media wasn't such assholes, like, would he have played, 94, 95? Would he have won 8 straight? Or would he have won 6 straight and gotten bored then? Or won 5 straight and gotten
Or getting
bored?
burnt out. That's a lot of
That's what I
that's a
mean.
lot of extra basketball. But again, he played an entire another sport and then trained his body to be back into the other sport. And he did Space Jam and he was practicing and he was weightlifting. They
Right.
did all that. I mean, it's just
If
it's
Reggie
ridiculous
Miller
what
was
he
saying
did.
that. I like how Reggie Miller said that. He was like, he'd wake up at like 6 or 7 a.m., film all day, and then come work out and play basketball all night, and then get up and do it all over again. He's like, I don't know how he did it.
Yeah, and another thing that I think is cool, but I also find hard to believe, is that the '98 Pacers and Jazz were favored over the Bulls. I know specifically Wilbon is talking about he still to this day doesn't know how the Bulls beat that Pacers team. Just because they were stacked, they were on the come up. Reggie was really he was on fire that season. He was playing really well.
Yep.
And they should have. They were the better team. They should have won. I mean, they took him to 7,
Yeah.
but it was just he's still amazed that the Bulls were able to win, go through that.
I wasn't as impressed with that Pacers team until I saw this documentary.
Yeah, because they don't look that good on paper.
Right. Well, whenever you see them talk about the Pacers, they only talk about
Losing
Reggie Miller.
or Lau.
And
Knicks.
Jalen Rose was like, yo, we had Mark Jackson, and I didn't realize how good Mark Jackson was until after he got fired from the Warriors, and I wasn't familiar with his basketball career. So, Mark Jackson was solid, Jalen Rose was solid, Reggie Miller was obviously a Hall of Famer. He claimed Rick Smits or whatever. I've seen him in 2K. He's got some decent 2K cards, which means he had to have been decent back in the day. Not saying he's a legend, but a solid center. And I'm assuming a better center than who the Bulls had, because to me, all of the Bulls' power forwards and centers, aside from maybe Horace Grant, who eventually went to the Magic, were pretty much trash white guys.
Yeah.
Or old Bill Cartwright. Medical Bill was his nickname
Yeah.
for Michael Jordan, because he was always old and injured. So I just I don't know. Oh, and Charles Oakley, but he got traded to the Knicks before the Bulls got good.
Doesn't that lend more doesn't that lend more doubt in your mind about the Rockets that, they faced these three teams, that all had, better at the center position and kind of had a nice front court to be able to, backcourt to be able to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Magic and the Pacers and the Jazz, they all had great centers, great power forwards. Or, the Jazz, the Pacers had a pretty good, better than the Bulls center, for sure. And they had shooters all around.
Right.
And that's essentially how the Rockets were built.
Right. Well, what's the question again?
I'm just saying, doesn't that add doubt, to, the Rockets, because I know Kenny Smith has gone on record saying we would have beaten the Bulls if Jordan had made it there. He was still with that team. Like, that team could beat the Michael Jordan-led Bulls or whatever. And there's, some debate on, they don't match up. The Bulls don't match up well, especially down low in the post and everything. But then the Bulls go through Shaq, and they go through Malone, and they go through, all these, big man-led teams that have a solid, shooting range around them.
You're right. I don't know. I guess maybe they found a way to take Shaq out of the game, but just watching the highlights I saw of Akeem versus the Bulls, sometimes they were double and triple teaming, and he was still scoring.
Yeah, that's wild.
Getting and ones. And I'm not trying to say Akeem's necessarily better than Shaq. I would say they both have parts of their game that make them better than the other, but I would say Akeem's one of the best big men to ever play the game.
Top five,
Jordan didn't have to play Kareem. He didn't have to play Kareem that much, if at all. So, because when he won the championship in '91, I don't even know if Kareem was still playing, and if he was super old. That was the last good Lakers year, was that '91 year.
Yeah.
So, I just don't think there was a better center than Akeem.
Yeah. Because,
he did it all, dude. His offense was amazing. I need to show you the highlights, dude, because he had some nasty blocks on Pippen. His Pippen was long, and he would go for these huge, layups or finger rolls, and Akeem would be behind him, and he would block the entire shot and, throw Pippen out of bounds from blocking him so hard. No foul. It was just, I don't know. Akeem was an animal, and to me, they had no answer for him. Somehow they found a way to answer on Malone, I guess, and Rick Smits and all these other guys, but from what I saw, it looked like they had no answer for Akeem. And if they did double or triple team him, he would either score or he had somebody to pass to.
Yeah. And
he was a willing passer. He had quadruple double. Points, assists, rebounds, and blocks.
Yeah.
Monster. I don't know. But I think Kenny had that much faith in Akeem, too. So, there's no telling, dude. Anyway, it's Michael Jordan, too. It seemed like he always he won when he needed to.
Yeah, exactly.
He would lose a few games, and they'd make a big deal about him losing, and he'd be like, nah, F that. No, we're going to win the next game.
And then they win the next game, yeah.
Yeah, so... All right, we're kind of dragging on here. The only other thing I want to talk about was... I was going to talk about... I guess I'll go ahead and talk about the 96 finals where, they lose 2 straight, and he laughs at Gary Payton and says that he had a lot on his mind and this and that, and it's I just didn't get that either. Because you beat him 3 games straight. And so if Gary Payton wasn't a factor, why did y'all lose those 2 games then? Why not just
sweep him?
And then he starts talking about his dad, and it's okay, well, you won the final game on Father's Day. Isn't that more... Wouldn't that throw you more off your game than it would the previous 2 games that weren't on Father's Day? Did you purposely lose those games so you could win it on Father's Day for your father? They don't talk about that in detail. They just brush over that. And I'm like, well, okay, why then?
That doesn't make any sense, yeah.
Why are you laughing at Gary if that wasn't the case? And if you were distracted by your dad, you snapped out of it on Father's Day?
I guess.
I don't know. It just...
My last note I got, very important note. I really liked how when they beat the Pacers in 7 games, Jordan saw Larry after the game, and Larry calls him a bitch. I loved that. That was amazing.
Yeah. So that brings me to my next point, too, is, people making Michael mad, him taking it personal. That's been the running meme right lately.
So I take it personally, yeah.
And people saying, Reggie Miller and Gary Payton both specifically saying, I didn't back down to Michael. And from what I've seen, I don't think it was ever about that. I don't think Michael...
People were scared and they
Like,
just didn't
people
play
thought
well.
they would get the upper hand if they were a dick to Michael, but really all it did was make him mad
Yeah.
and cause them to lose. And then other people who thought that, like, standing up to him was the better way and that they weren't afraid of him, it's like, I don't think he cared. Because he still beat those guys.
Yeah.
So it didn't make a difference whether they treated him a certain way or another. But you notice, like, people who just played the game and just played hard and didn't necessarily talk shit but didn't necessarily back down. They just played their game and was a normal person off the court. Those were the people he was friends with. Charles Barkley, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson.
Yeah.
Like, people who played hard, but, like, they just weren't... They weren't so filled with their egos that they had to either be a dick to him or... Like, by, like, George Karl ignoring him.
Mhm.
Like, Michael knew George Karl. Like, George Karl was like, well, I'm going to ignore Michael. Like, this is playoff basketball. Like, I'm not going to talk to him. And Michael's like, okay. Really? We know each other from North Carolina. You're not going to say hi to me? All right, well, screw you then. And then, like, Gary and Reggie, who, like, decide to get all up in Michael's face, he just laughs them off.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, Larry and Magic, they just played their game. They just played him, and sure enough, he's friends with those guys. I don't know. I just thought everyone's approach to Michael was always so ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I agree.
they put him on a pedestal, and no matter which way they did it, it didn't help them.
At all, yeah.
And it always backfired. And like Larry Bird, whenever they played Michael when he was young, like Larry Bird goes, yeah, he's the best player on the court. But they won.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, they won, they beat the Bulls, you know, because Michael didn't have any help, but I don't know. Just shit like that. All right, so to cap it off, again, I do like how the entire series comes to an end with this huge what if about the 7th ring and Michael still being bitter about it. And I wish it would have gone into more detail, but it does end with them going, Bulls win the 6th championship. Scottie Pippen's traded, Steve Kerr's traded, Phil doesn't come back. The Bulls begin to rebuild. It does not go over their rebuild results, which I wish it did, but luckily I finally Googled them for this episode. So are you ready to hear?
Yeah.
Jerry-
I was waiting for that. Bulls went 40 and 196 or something.
Right. So this is the epic Bulls rebuild of Jerry Krause saying that I don't know, I'm quoting him, but this isn't an accurate quote, but basically saying that organizations win teams, not players, or as he corrected himself, a combination of players and organizations, and that no matter what Phil Jackson did, he wasn't coming back. And so here's what he did. He's got Coach Tim Floyd, who I've never heard of. After the lockout season, they went 13-37, finishing 8th in the NBA Central Division, which I'm assuming if you're 8th in your division, you are last in your division.
Yeah.
Their starting lineup consisted of Brent Barry.
Never heard of him?
You've heard of Brent Barry?
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Okay. Bunch of people I've never heard of. Ron Harper stayed on the team. Tony Kukoc was still on the team.
Okay.
And Bill Winnington was still on the team. It was his 11th year, Bill Winnington, and Ron Harper's 12th, so they're probably towards the end of their careers.
Yep.
So, awful season. And let's skip to 99-2000, so the second year of the rebuild. They finished 17-65, 8th in the Central Division. Coached by Tim
Last
Floyd.
again.
Yeah, still coached by Tim Floyd, 1765, executive Jerry Krause. Notable players on the team, B.J. Armstrong randomly came back. Elton Brand was a rookie out of Duke. So honestly, not a bad draft by Jerry Krause. I'll give him that. But doesn't look like he did that great. Hershey Hawkins in his 11th year. I think he's a legend. Don't know how he did. Fred Hoiberg, future coach of the Bulls. Hoiberg, I believe, coached the Bulls a year or two ago. Tony Kukoc was still on the team. Will Perdue was back. And Meta World Peace was a rookie out of St. John's.
That's great. I mean, that's
Or
decent,
Ron Artest, as he was known back then.
decent pick.
So, still terrible team. So let's go to 2000-2001. Third year of the rebuild. They finish, instead of 17-65, they finish 15-67. So even worse, Tim Floyd and Jerry Krause again. Same coach and executive 3 years straight, and they're awful. They have Elton Brand, Jamal Crawford as a rookie.
All right.
Still Fred Hoiberg, Ron Mercer, who I've heard of, Brad Miller, who played on the Rockets briefly. I believe it's the same Brad Miller. He also played for the Kings. White guy, center, decent. And then still Meta World Peace. All right, so they sucked. And then let's go to 0102. Or did I already say that? No, the 0102. Fourth year of the rebuild. Tim Floyd. They had 3 coaches this year. Tim Floyd went 4-21. I'm assuming before being let go. And so, how did Tim Floyd? How do you have Phil Jackson win 60+ games a year, 6 championships, and you let a guy who can't get more than 20 wins coach 3.5 seasons?
I don't know.
Bill Barry, never heard of him, went 0-2, and then Bill Cartwright, former player who I guess was an assistant during this run of rebuilds, went 17-38 for their final record of 21-61, last in the division. Notable players: Greg Anthony, who was in his 10th year, he was on the Knicks '94 team. Rookie Tyson Chandler, still first year Jamal Crawford, Eddie Curry. Del Curry's Steph Curry's dad.
Yeah.
So I don't know who Eddie Curry is. I know the name, I feel like. Still Fred Hoiberg, still Brad Miller. He got Charles Oakley back in his 16th year.
No reason to have that.
No, that makes
Probably
no
overpaid.
sense. And then Jalen Rose in his 7th year and still Meta World Peace. Okay.
It's a weird
That's
spot.
0102. This is Jerry Krause's, I believe, last year in 0203. I believe he passed away in 03. They went 30-52, slightly better. They finished 6th in the division. Bill Cartwright was the coach for the entire season. It says executives Jerry Krause and John Paxson. So yeah. Notable players: Tyson Chandler, Jamal Crawford, and Jalen Rose, Jay Williams. Oh, Jay Williams is a rookie who was apparently decent, but he got plagued by injuries, and he's now an ESPN analyst. And then I pulled up the 03-04 season for a reason. So this was after Jerry Krause had passed away. They had gotten to 30 wins in the following year after that in 03-04. Michael had already been on the Wizards at this point too, by the way.
Yeah.
They went 23-59, so they got worse, and they got last in the division again. Bill Cartwright went 4-10. Pete Myers went 0-2, and then Scott Skiles, a former NBA player, takes over and goes 19-47. John Paxson was the executive for the entire year, apparently. Notable players still: Tyson Chandler, Jamal Crawford, Kendall Gill in his 13th year, so trash probably. Rookie Kirk Heinrich, and 16th year Scottie Pippen. I didn't realize Pippen ever went back.
Do you think he's just listed? Do you think he just signed a day contract or something?
Very good chance. This doesn't give me all the info, but yeah.
So they were absolute garbage.
Trash.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, from what I can tell, they didn't get good again until Derrick Rose.
Yeah. Wow.
And so that's why I wish Jerry Krause were here to defend himself, because it's like, your rebuild sucked.
Yeah, it worked.
Why did it suck? What's your excuse for it sucking? Why tear apart the team? Do you regret tearing apart the team?
And you know he'd have an excuse too, which
Exactly.
would be entertaining.
I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it. So yeah, it's just especially that rebuild not even being in the slightest bit successful. And I actually wish they would have like Tony Kukoc or somebody comment on the rebuild.
On the rebuild, because he was there, yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been nice.
Exactly. Like, hey, did you like it? You know, with the new coach and Michael not being there and you having the keys to the offense and whatever the hell happened.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear what he say on that. So yeah, I just, with it being so bad, why would they let that happen? If I were a Bulls fan, dude, I'd be disgusted.
Yeah, I guess you would be, but you also got 6 championships in 8 years.
Right. But they also let that slip. We could have had 7 and 9.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
All right, where does this rank on our scale?
Fuego.
Really?
We give it a Fuego. Like I said, I think it's up there if it's not the best sports documentary I've ever seen.
Right. I give it decent. Your heart like stops.
I was legitimately shocked by that.
I get
I don't
it.
know why I like looked at you and thought you weren't joking around.
I give it decent plus decent, which does equal Fuego on the show.
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
I've read that.
No, I was entertained the whole time. Really, my biggest knocks were the commercials, the fact that I have seen a lot of this content before, but again, The Last Dance has no. It's not really their fault. You know, they're telling the story, and obviously a lot. It does kind of baffle me. I guess not everybody's a diehard Michael Jordan fan. That makes sense, but like, it does baffle me how much, like, especially NBA players, don't know about Michael Jordan. Like how much they didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't know, like, it's like Eminem when he was coming up as a rapper. He studied all the rappers.
Yeah.
Like if you're a basketball player, you just think you'd study some Michael Jordan.
Why not? Yeah.
Like you're watching Kobe and LeBron, you're not gonna watch the guy that they learned from, or not necessarily learned everything from, but like they watched him.
Yeah.
Like I don't care. Like especially even if you're 18, like you have, and you're in the NBA or 20 in the NBA, you have access to YouTube. You can watch all of this stuff. I don't know. That kind of thing just baffles me. So I give it Fuego. Other notable sports documentaries, I'd have to say maybe go to like the Bad Boys. I Hate Christian Laettner.
Reggie Miller versus the New York Knicks.
Yeah, that one was good. Even the Pete Weber one on bowling is actually pretty good. But it probably is the best sports documentary ever. And I think Michael Wilborn said it best. You can't make 10 episodes about somebody besides Michael Jordan because they're just not that interesting.
No, it's not nearly as interesting.
Everything he went through, all that media scrutiny, all the pressure,
Controversy, success.
how controversial he was, his owner, his GM were. The fact that you can play for a team where you don't like the GM and possibly the owner and still bring them 6 rings is
Ridiculous.
yeah. And I mean, I'd say it wouldn't happen in today's NBA, but maybe it has, and we just don't know about it because a lot of this stuff does go on behind closed doors. Even though I'm not a fan of their dynasty, I would, if they do make a Warriors documentary, I would definitely be excited to see it.
Oh yeah, because there's something there for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I think somebody made up the point. I know we're getting off topic here, but we're about to end the episode anyway. Somebody made the point. They're like, I think there's not a whole lot of proof to it, but they're like, do you ever see KD wear his Warriors rings? Like, do you ever see him? Does he care about his Warrior rings? Does he wear them? You know, if he were to win a championship with the Nets, that would mean way more to him than those Warriors rings.
Yeah.
Like, those rings don't mean as much.
Yeah.
And they talk about the same thing. They're like, yeah, the Heat taught LeBron how to win, but that championship in Cleveland is his biggest championship. Like, that means way more than the Heat ones.
The other two combined, yeah.
Right. But I don't agree with the fact that LeBron's one championship in Cleveland is just as good as Michael's 3-peat or Michael's 6-peat.
No,
Like-
that's the stupidest thing. Wait. Yep, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Yeah.
So, yeah. Any final thoughts?
No. Yeah.
Oh.
Basketball's good.
Yeah, love The Last Dance. Definitely was creaming my pants for the entire thing. Really glad that it came out, that it happened, that we got to watch it. I can't wait to watch it again. All you loyal fans out there, feel free to tweet or comment your opinions on The Last Dance, what you liked or didn't like, and be sure to look out for future videos. For Reagan, I'm Ryan. You have a great night.